I'm Kurt Top, and these are 100 unexplained artifacts found in Egypt. The results shocked the scientists. The story of the mummy, which had been kept at the University of Warsaw for many years and was shrouded in mystery, has finally received a logical explanation. It was previously believed that this was a man, a priest named Kor Jikuti, who lived in the 1st century BC. However, in 2015, Polish researchers decided to perform a CT scan and discovered that it was actually a woman. Moreover, scientists thought that she was pregnant at the time of her death. The scans supposedly show the bones of a fetus, a tiny hand, and a leg. This caused huge interest in the scientific world, as it could have been the first pregnant mummy ever discovered. Moreover, researchers noticed deformations on the skull of the mysterious lady and suggested that aggressive cancer could have been the cause of death. However, over time, doubts began to arise. Radiologist Sakar Salim from Cairo immediately noticed that there was no anatomical evidence of a fetus and asked a logical question: why did the bones disappear, but the soft tissues of the baby remain? Recently, archaeologist Kamila Braulinskaya and her colleagues revisited the case and conducted a repeated analysis of more than 1,400 CT scans. 4 independent groups worked on it, and they all came to the same conclusion: there was no pregnancy. The so-called fetus turned out to be clumps of tissue left over due to disruptions in the mummification process. The same goes for the supposed cancer. The skull was damaged during the removal of the brain, which is not uncommon in careless embalming. So the mysterious lady remains a mystery once again, but now it's pointless. This story shows how important it is to double-check even the most sensational scientific discoveries. Icy ruins beneath the snow. We are used to thinking of the Arctic as a place ruled only by icy emptiness, lifeless, empty, devoid of any traces of civilization. But what if that's not the case? What if beneath the thick glaciers, there are not just traces of long-lost peoples, but entire lost cities? Satellite research in recent years has led to the discovery of anomalous shapes beneath the icy crust, which point to ancient ruins hidden deep within the northern depths. According to some scientists, these cities could be much older than the very first civilizations known to us. Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient India. All these peoples might have simply been a continuation of something greater and more mysterious than we can imagine. How is this possible? How could it happen that such cities are hidden under kilometers-thick layers of ice? Today, these anomalies are still considered hypotheses, but each new study only increases their significance. Satellite images taken in the most remote corners of the planet show strange shapes and lines that resemble the structure of buildings, streets, or even entire cities. Are these glaciers not just barriers, but burial grounds of ancient civilizations? Ice caps that conceal not only climate changes, but also forgotten epics of humanity. Amazingly, it's possible that these cities fell victim to global catastrophes that preceded the ice ages. After all, is there anything older than what is preserved in eternal ice? This question concerns scientists now more than ever, and perhaps if we unravel the mystery hidden beneath centuries-old ice, we will reconsider not only the history of our civilizations, but also our very understanding of how our world developed. Surrounded by 2 goddesses, in 1908, archaeologists made a stunning discovery: 4,500-year-old statues of Pharaoh Menkora, hidden in the sands of Giza. These statues have been preserved in almost perfect condition, demonstrating the highest craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian sculptors. Menkora was not just a ruler, but the builder of one of the Great Pyramids. And here he is, depicted surrounded by 2 goddesses. To the left of the pharaoh stands Hathor, the goddess of love, motherhood, and the sky, symbolizing protection and divine patronage. On the right is a female figure representing one of the nomes, the regions of Egypt, emphasizing the importance of the king as the unifier of the country. These compositions not only glorified the pharaoh, but also emphasized his connection with the gods. The sculptures of Menkora are some of the most impressive examples of ancient Egyptian art. They lift the veil on the past, allowing us to see how the Egyptians perceived power, divinity, and royal grandeur. The Benben stone. This amazing artifact inspired the Egyptians to create 2 of their greatest architectural achievements: pyramids and obelisks. Imagine a sacred pyramid-shaped stone called the Ben, or pyramidion. Every day the first rays of the rising sun fell upon it, bestowing their power on everyone around. The stone was kept in the religious center of Egypt, Heliopolis, where, according to the ancients, the creation of the world began. However, at some unknown point in history, the original Ben stone disappeared. This stone was associated not only with the gods Atum and Ra, but also with the Bennu bird, which, according to myths, cried out on the Ben stone, announcing the beginning of the creation of the world. Thanks to these connections, the Ben stone became an integral part of the solar temples of ancient Egypt. The Egyptians called it gold, and the stone reflected the sun's rays, filling the temples with light. This stone inspired the design of obelisk and pyramid tops, which we still see in museums worldwide. The Sistine Chapel of ancient Egypt. Before you is one of the most stunning tombs of ancient Egypt, the burial place of Queen Nefertari, wife of Ramses II. It is already more than 3,200 years old, and it is often called the Sistine Chapel of Egypt because of its incredible paintings. Unlike many other tombs, this one impresses not only with its scale, but also with its bright, almost untouched colors. On the walls, there are scenes from the Book of the Dead, images of gods, and Nefertari herself, walking into the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that such paintings would help the deceased pass the trials and achieve eternal life. The detailing is stunning. Fine lines, intricate patterns, and vibrant colors. All of this makes the tomb a true masterpiece. Unfortunately, many sections of the walls were damaged by time, but restorers managed to preserve its grandeur. Today, this tomb is considered one of the most beautiful in the Valley of the Queens, and a true window into the world of ancient Egyptian art. In the city of Esna, Egypt, there is an ancient temple dedicated to the god Khnum and his family. Recent restoration work has uncovered impressive reliefs, revealing images of gods and the starry sky of the ancient Egyptians. Over the past years, this temple, which was a key religious center during the Ptolemaic era, has attracted the attention of scholars. Since 2018, restoration work has been carried out here, thanks to which a unique image was discovered on the temple roof, demonstrating the ancient Egyptian understanding of the cosmos. One of the most striking reliefs is the depiction of the sky goddess Nut. Her figure, arched in the shape of the sky, illustrates the myth of how she swallows the sun every night in order to give birth to it again the next day. This concept symbolizes the eternal rebirth and movement of the sky. An image of the god Thoth and the sun, god Khnumra, was created, and nearby there are symbols such as snakes, birds, and crocodiles with unusual heads, demonstrating the deep symbolism and mythology of the ancient Egyptians. These reliefs serve as a bridge between our past and present, reminding us how people have always been fascinated by the heavens and have sought answers to their questions by looking at the stars. Who built the pyramids? They have stood for more than 4,500 years, hundreds of tons of stone, millions of blocks, perfectly measured angles. The majestic, almost alien pyramids of Giza still remain a symbol of eternity and mystery. But the main question is simple: how? Modern archaeology offers different theories. According to one of them, the blocks were quarried, delivered to the construction site using sledges and wet sand. Another theory says the blocks were made on site from limestone and clay, essentially ancient concrete. French engineer Joseph Davidovits even presented his own formula for geopolymer stone. And still, even taking these hypotheses into account, we don't have a definite answer. It's not just about the technology, the mystery is in the scale. To build the Pyramid of Khufu, it would have taken about 2.3 million blocks. Even with perfect labor organization, that's decades and thousands of workers. And now let's remember, this was the ancient world. No wheeled cranes, no steel, no electricity. And yet, the internal shafts are aligned with centimeter precision, and the orientation of the pyramid's sides almost perfectly matches the 4 cardinal directions. And there are other questions. Why were such tombs needed? Why are all 3 pyramids of Giza aligned at the same angles as the stars of Orion's belt? Why do some blocks show traces of processing that look more like melting than cutting? The more I read about the pyramids, the more I feel that they're not just structures, they're a message. They weren't built only for the dead, they were built for the future, for us. And until we understand exactly how they were built, we won't understand why they were built. The legacy of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, being one of the earliest and longest-lasting civilizations in human history, left an indelible mark on the cultural and scientific landscape of the world. Its influence can be felt in the architecture, art, religion, astronomy, and medicine of many later cultures, especially in the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations. The architectural achievements of the Egyptians, especially the construction of the pyramids, inspired the Greeks and Romans to create their own monumental structures. The concept of columns and obelisks was borrowed and adapted in various forms of classical architecture. Egyptian symbolism and style were reflected in Roman temples and public buildings, emphasizing respect for ancient knowledge and cultural heritage. The scientific achievements of the Egyptians, including the development of mathematics and astronomy, had a significant influence on the development of these sciences in Greece and beyond. Egyptian methods of timekeeping and calendar calculation, as well as their knowledge of stars and planets, formed the basis for further astronomical research in the ancient world. The Egyptians achieved significant success, especially in the fields of surgery and pharmacology. Records of medical procedures found in Egyptian papyri testify to the advanced knowledge of the ancient Egyptians in treating diseases and injuries. This knowledge was passed on through Greek scholars such as Herodotus and Plato, who studied in Egypt and influenced the development of medicine in Europe. Ancient Egypt continues to inspire modern culture, science, and art. Images and symbols borrowed from Egyptian mythology and history regularly appear in literature, cinema, music, and even fashion. Egyptian motifs are used in the design of jewelry, clothing, and interior items, demonstrating the enduring interest in this ancient culture. Efforts to preserve Egyptian monuments, including pyramids, temples, and tombs, are an important part of global efforts to protect cultural heritage. Conservation and restoration programs supported by international organizations such as UNESCO help protect these priceless monuments for future generations. Interest in ancient Egypt, fueled by both new archaeological discoveries and modern technologies, continues to grow. This not only allows us to preserve but also to expand our understanding of this unique civilization, as well as to explore new ways of engaging with its cultural heritage. The possibilities of virtual reality and interactive museum exhibits open up a new horizon for education and cultural connection. I suggest a deeper and more intimate immersion into the world of the ancient Egyptians. Innovations in archaeology and monument preservation, such as satellite archaeology and advanced dating methods, continue to reveal the mysteries of the past. These technologies not only help scientists discover lost cities and tombs, but also provide new data about the climate, social structure, and even the diet of the ancient Egyptians. This, in turn, sheds light on the reasons for the rise and fall of this great civilization. In addition, the growing interest in the reconstruction and revival of ancient Egyptian crafts, such as papyrus making, faience production, and traditional construction methods, helps preserve these ancient techniques for future generations. Overall, the legacy of ancient Egypt continues to influence the modern world in diverse and even unexpected ways. From the inspiring achievements of ancient craftsmen to the ongoing efforts to preserve and study their creations, ancient Egypt remains a vivid reminder that the past always matters for the present and the future, offering lessons, inspiration, and food for thought to generations of explorers, creators, and dreamers. Pyramids, when they were built. The pyramids we see today are far from how they looked when they were first constructed. Don't believe it? Let's dive into history. Ancient engineers used an astonishing 6.1 million tons of limestone to erect the main pyramid of Giza, the largest and oldest of them all. It was built by order of Pharaoh Khufu. But what do you think it looked like before? No, it wasn't sandy brown. It was covered with a shiny layer of limestone. But, unfortunately, over time, many of the facing stones were reused. This probably started during the reign of Tutankhamun and continued for many centuries. Add to that the earthquake of 1303 AD, which shook them a bit. Nowadays, the pyramids still amaze us with their durability. For example, the Pyramid of Khafre, which has even preserved some of its original facing stones, It looks as if one peak is wedged into another. It's amazing. On top of the pyramids, so-called pyramidions were installed covered with electrum, a shiny mixture of gold and silver. Unfortunately, most of them have been lost over time, but some examples can still be seen in museums. The melted steps of the staircase in the Temple of Hathor raise many questions among archaeologists and researchers. These steps, located in one of the best preserved temples of ancient Egypt, look as if they were exposed to incredibly high temperatures, which could have caused their deformation and partial melting. Unusual bends and sunken areas can be seen on the surface of the steps, which are not typical for the usual wear and tear of stone structures. There are various theories that try to explain this phenomenon. One hypothesis suggests that the steps could have been bent as a result of some unknown thermal impact, such as ritual fires or processes related to ancient technologies. Another theory points to possible construction errors. If the stones for the steps were formed directly on site from a liquid mixture, then interrupting the hardening process could have led to an incorrect shape and softness of the material. Scientists are still studying this phenomenon, adding yet another mystery to the rich legacy of ancient Egypt. The black granite slab of Heraklion, once one of the greatest ports of ancient Egypt, disappeared underwater after a devastating earthquake in the 1st century BC. Its existence was long considered a myth until the French archaeologist Frank Godiot discovered the lost city in the early 2000s in Abu Kirbeh, near the modern coast of Egypt. The most remarkable find was a massive black granite slab, on which the name of the city and details of its connection to the ancient Egyptian gods were inscribed, Heraklion. Along with the slab, archaeologists found dozens of sunken ships, remarkably well-preserved statues, temples, and numerous artifacts, including jewelry, coins, and personal belongings of the inhabitants. Excavations are ongoing, and each discovered object sheds light on the role of Heraklion as a major center of trade and religious life. The city, submerged in the depths of the sea, remains a reminder of how natural disasters can forever change the course of history. Bright glass beads. Archaeologists studying the Bronze Age in northern Italy discovered thousands of glass beads over 3,000 years old in the ancient settlement of Frontesino. These bright artifacts shed light on the earliest art of glassmaking in Europe. A team of archaeologists found a Bronze Age clay furnace surrounded by tools and remnants of glass objects in a structure unlike any other in Europe from that era. Among the finds are many multicolored beads that have preserved their rich colors, from blue to red, from white to black, with patterns of swirls and spots. Even after thousands of years, their colors remain bright, as if they have just come out of the furnace. The lasting color is due to the unique composition of the local glass, made from sand from the Po River, which gave the items their longevity. Frontesino, which flourished from 1200 to 1100 BC, was a center of craft, production, and trade. In addition to glass, amber and ivory were processed here, and they also worked with bronze, gold, tin, and iron. Mummy unwrapping parties. In the 18th and 19th centuries, European society was gripped by a real craze for ancient Egypt, which became known as Egyptomania. The fascination with Egypt and its ancient mysteries became so popular that mummies began to be imported into Europe as early as the 15th century, when it was believed that their ground remains could be a cure for many diseases. But they were also attractive. The peak of interest in mummies came in the 19th century, greatly aided by Napoleon's Egyptian campaigns, which inspired Europeans to become fascinated with ancient artifacts. However, this curiosity about mummies was far from scientific. It was more of an eccentric form of entertainment. Victorian aristocrats began to hold so-called mummy unwrapping parties. These events became a fashionable form of entertainment. The invited guests would gather, enjoy drinks, and then watch as archaeologists or historians carefully unwrap the ancient bandages from the mummy. This spectacle was often accompanied by a lecture explaining the culture and rituals of ancient Egypt. These parties were popularized by the English surgeon Thomas Pettigrew, who would display mummies for aristocratic audiences, combining scientific education with a spectacular show. Although such events seem creepy today, for Victorians it was an exciting opportunity to come into contact with the mysterious little-known ancient past. Forgotten rulers of Egypt. Most of us think of Egypt as an eternal civilization, strong, proud, and independent. But there was a time when it was ruled by outsiders. They were called the Hyksos. This word means rulers of foreign lands or shepherd kings. Who they really were is still a matter of debate. The Hyksos invaded Egypt around the 17th century BC, and they didn't just destroy the country, they conquered it. They founded a dynasty, ruled for almost a century, and introduced new technologies. It is believed that they were the ones who brought the war chariot to Egypt. This changed the entire country.
Ведения войны на Ближнем Востоке. Также
There is evidence that the Hyksos were the first to actively use bronze and composite weapons in Egyptian territory. Where they came from remains a mystery. Some believe they came from Canaan, the modern Levant. Others think they were nomadic tribes from Asia. Some researchers suggest that the Hyksos were a mix of different peoples, traders, warriors, and herders, who united during a wave of migration and wars. But their culture has not survived in its pure form. We know about them mainly from Egyptian sources, which means there's a strong sense of hostility. After the expulsion of the Hyksos, the Egyptians began a new era, the 18th dynasty, the very one in which Tutankhamun lived. Perhaps it was hatred toward their oppressors that made Egypt a great power once again. However, some of the achievements of the Hyksos were preserved and became part of Egyptian tradition. I'm always struck by moments like these, when the victors not only forget the defeated, but also take the very best from them. A giant stone sarcophagus. This sarcophagus belonged to the powerful pharaoh Ramesses III, who ruled Egypt during the 20th dynasty. It is a true masterpiece of ancient Egyptian sculpture and ritual art. The huge stone coffin is covered with carefully engraved symbols and scenes from the Book of the Dead, which were meant to help the pharaoh pass through the afterlife and achieve eternal life. On its side walls are depicted protective goddesses, such as Isis and Nephthys, spreading their wings, symbolizing divine patronage and protection. The hieroglyphic inscriptions tell about the deeds of Ramesses III and his connections with the gods. Interestingly, this sarcophagus was reused by priest kings of the 21st dynasty, showing that royal tombs were reused in a later period. Today, this great sarcophagus is kept in the Louvre, where thousands of visitors can see it. The mystery of Orion. Have you ever wondered why many ancient monuments face the constellation Orion? Could it be that from there, from the distant cosmos, gods came to our Earth? Incredible as it may seem, it's a fact. Our ancestors left us an entire system of signs pointing to Orion. They created architectural masterpieces, complex calendars, and observation points that allowed them to track the positions of stars in the sky. Orion was one of the most popular constellations among the ancients. His image was even found on a mammoth tusk dated to 32,500 BC. While studying an ancient sanctuary on the Kola Peninsula, scientists noticed an interesting detail. If you connect the locations of the finds with imaginary lines on a map, you get the constellation Orion. And that can no longer be a coincidence. Orion seems to be everywhere. There is no place on Earth where it hasn't been found. Egypt, Mexico, ancient Babylon, ancient Rus. Everywhere, it played a crucial role, becoming the center of the heavens. It was probably based on the principle, as above, so below. The ancient Egyptians built their pyramids, creating a terrestrial map of this constellation. And even the three large volcanoes on Mars together form Orion's belt. Is it just a coincidence or a trace of a cosmic connection? And representatives of the ancient Egyptian civilization also believe that their gods descended from Orion and Sirius. New mysteries of Egyptian burial practices. Scientists have conducted a detailed analysis for the first time of the pink and white paste used to seal coffins in ancient Egypt. The study showed that these substances had different compositions and served different functions. One of the first samples studied was the coffin of Pakepu, a priest and guardian of burials in Thebes, who lived about 2,700 years ago. His wooden coffin, kept at the Fitzwilliam Museum of the University of Cambridge, consisted of two parts, an inner and an intermediate coffin, sealed with special compounds. Analysis showed that the pink paste was used to fill structural gaps, while the white paste served as a base for painting. Interestingly, a layer resembling papier-mâché was found in the inner coffin, a multi-layered composition of linen and plaster, similar to those used for funerary masks and mummy casings. The main component of both pastes was calcite obtained by grinding limestone. However, a purer material was used in the inner coffin, which confirms the special attention given to the structure that was in direct contact with the body. The pink paste, containing iron impurities, was coarser and served technical purposes. Its granular structure helped prevent shrinkage during drying. The variety of compositions indicates that different craftsmen worked on the coffin, each applying their own method. In 2022, archaeologists made an incredible discovery. They found the first burial chamber of an Egyptian pharaoh in a century, that of Thutmose II. He ruled about 3,500 years ago and was the fourth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. The burial site is located in the Valley of the Kings, on the west bank of Luxor, in the same place where the famous tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered in 1922. The entrance to the tomb was found in 2022, and archaeologists immediately noticed fragments of vessels with inscriptions that identified Thutmose II as the deceased king. The name of his wife, the great Queen Hatshepsut, was also on these vessels. Soon, scientists discovered that the remains of the pharaoh had been moved to another location several centuries after the tomb was looted. The tomb is in poor condition because it was flooded shortly after Thutmose II's death. Inside, fragments of blue inscriptions, yellow stars, and parts of religious texts were found, indicating the importance of rituals associated with burial. Thutmose II was known for suppressing uprisings in Nubia and the Levant. His reign from 1492 to 1479 BC was relatively short. Compared to his ancestors, his tomb was considered less significant. This discovery became an important contribution to understanding ancient Egyptian culture and the reign of Thutmose II. Archaeologists call it one of the most significant archaeological achievements of recent years. The Erie harp, over 3,000 years old, is a unique artifact of ancient Egypt, kept in the collections of the Metropolitan Museum. This exquisite musical instrument dates back to 1390-1295 BC, which corresponds to the New Kingdom period. The harp is made of wood and is 82 centimeters long. Its neck is topped with a sculpted image of the head of a Nubian prisoner. This is not just a decorative element, but a symbolic image, probably related to the triumph of the Egyptians in military campaigns. The harp strings, visually connecting the prisoner's head, may be a metaphor for conquest. The object's preservation is impressive, considering its age. Such instruments were used not only for entertainment purposes, but also in ritual ceremonies, which emphasizes their significance in the culture of ancient Egypt. The death of Alexander. Alexander the Great conquered half the world by the age of 30. His army marched from Greece to India. He never lost a single battle. He destroyed empires and created new ones. But in 323 BC, at the height of his power, he suddenly died in Babylon. He was only 32 years old. What happened? There are many theories. The Persians said it was punishment for desecrating the tomb of King Cyrus. The Macedonians believed he simply overstrained himself, drinking, illnesses, exhaustion. Roman historians thought he was poisoned. There is a theory that it was malaria or West Nile fever, or an autoimmune disease, or a slow-acting poison brought from the east. But the biggest questions are not about the cause of death, but about what happened afterward. Where is his body? According to one version, the sarcophagus was taken to Egypt. According to another version, it never made it there. After that, the trail goes cold. No tomb, no inscription, indicating an unofficial burial. For the ancient world, this is almost impossible. A person like that should have been deified, but instead there is only silence. Some suggest that the body was deliberately hidden to avoid fueling a cult, to prevent giving legitimacy to the heirs, or because his death was part of a conspiracy and someone wanted to remove all traces. Sometimes the most terrifying secret is not how a person lived, but how he left this world. All that remained of Alexander was fame, cities bearing his name, and a myth. But there was no final resting place, No cross, no mausoleum, only speculation. And that makes his death even more legendary and unsettling. Why is it forbidden to climb the pyramid? The top stone of the pyramid is the cherry on top, the final touch in its construction. Considering the harmony and beauty of the pyramid, it's unlikely that its builders would have left it unfinished. There is a theory that the top stone was made of gold and that at some point in the distant past it was removed from the top. But it's hard to believe, considering the height of the structure is more than 140 meters. The Spanish researcher Miguel Pérez Sanchez suggests that a huge spherical stone was installed at the top of the pyramid, symbolizing the Eye of Horus. It could have served as a tribute to Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. Its size and shape were designed with mathematics, geometry, and astronomy in mind. There is an interesting story connected to the top of the pyramid and Sir Siemens. Some time ago, the British inventor Sir Siemens found himself at the top of the pyramid, and as he was about to celebrate his achievement with a glass of wine, he was met with a surprise. He was shocked by electricity. The Arab guides, seeing Sir Siemens get shocked, got scared and tried to catch him. But Siemens pointed the bottle at them and gave them a powerful electric shock. Since then, it has been forbidden to climb to the top of the pyramid. Mystical mysteries of ancient Egypt. Since ancient times, the heavens have inspired Egypt to create majestic monuments. The astronomical knowledge embedded in the foundation of pyramid construction is striking in its accuracy and depth. The pyramids of Giza, built with astonishing precision in alignment with the stars of Orion's belt, testify to the extraordinary knowledge of the ancients in the field of cosmology. Such accuracy leads to speculation about possible extraterrestrial influence or help in construction. Various texts, including the pyramid texts, hint at a deep connection between the divine and the cosmic, suggesting the possibility that knowledge may have been passed to humans by more advanced civilizations. The complexities and perfection of ancient Egyptian architectural and engineering achievements, such as the ventilation systems inside the pyramids and the acoustics in the temples, inspire admiration and raise many questions. How were the ancient Egyptians able to so precisely shape and install multi-ton stone blocks without any apparent modern technology? Some claim that such knowledge could have been obtained from the gods, who, according to myths, visited the earth and shared their technologies. These assumptions are fueled by discoveries of unusually precise star maps, surgical instruments, and other items indicating a high level of scientific and technological development. The discoveries of artifacts with images resembling modern flying machines and complex mechanisms add an air of mystery to Egyptian history. For example, reliefs depicting objects that resemble helicopters and submarines spark debates among scholars. It is possible that the ancient Egyptians were inspired by visions of the future or used artifacts left behind by more advanced civilizations as prototypes for creating their own technologies. There is a theory that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge far ahead of their time, including the secrets of eternal life, methods for treating diseases that were incurable at that time, and ways to generate energy. This knowledge may have been lost or forgotten over the centuries, leaving behind only hints and references in religious texts and myths. The discovery of medical instruments, astronomical knowledge, and chemical compounds used in mummification supports the idea that the ancient Egyptians possessed advanced knowledge. Imagine for a moment that an artifact is found deep within the Great Pyramid, providing evidence of contact with an ancient civilization possessing technologies far beyond our own. The discovery of such a crystal, possibly emitting an unknown form of energy, could overturn our understanding of history, science, and the very nature of reality. This hypothetical scenario embodies humanity's eternal quest beyond the boundaries of the known and the desire to discover lost knowledge that could change the world. The dress has been changed. Before you is one of the rarest ancient Egyptian garments, a beaded dress dating to approximately 2550 BC from the period of the 4th Dynasty. This was the time when the Great Pyramids were built, and such outfits were worn by noble women, possibly even priestesses. The dress is made as a mesh of hundreds of small faience beads, creating the effect of scales or fish skin. It was worn over a thin linen tunic, which made the look not only elegant, but also symbolically significant. The Egyptians believed such clothing could grant protection in the favor of the gods. It's incredible that the dress has survived in such good condition for thousands of years. This is not just an item of clothing, but an artifact that gives us insight into the fashion, traditions, and aesthetics of the ancient Egyptian elite. Today it is kept in a museum and is one of the most outstanding examples of ancient textile art. Voids. Scientists want to perform an ultrasound scan on the huge pyramid that is 140 meters tall. They plan to use large telescopes to search for particles that will help us see what's hidden inside. The most interesting thing is that cosmic rays are used for this. They will help reveal the mystery of the two enigmatic voids inside the pyramid. One of them is located right above the large passage leading to the king's chamber. Its size is impressive, 30 meters long and 6 meters high. Scientists are not yet sure what awaits us inside. It could be one large space or a series of small rooms. It could be a hidden burial chamber of Cheops, or this place might have played a role during the construction of the pyramid. To solve this mystery, scientists use muons, elementary particles that are formed when cosmic rays collide with atoms in the Earth's atmosphere. With their help, it's possible to create a map of the voids inside the pyramid. Muons behave differently when interacting with various materials such as stone or air. This way, scientists can use muons to see what is inaccessible to ordinary observation. A pyramid that sank before recorded history. Near Yonaguni Island, at a depth of 30 meters on the ocean floor, lies a stone pyramid. Even steps, terraces, arches, and openings, everything looks as if it's a building, not just random rocks. The object is about 10,000 years old, meaning it was built even before the Sumerians, Egyptians, and the first cities. Scientists are still debating it. Some are sure it's natural, while others consider Yonaguni to be proof of a previously unrecognized civilization. If they're right, it could completely change our understanding of when and how human history began. What if this isn't just a mistaken trace of history, but a trace of some civilization? What if there's a history hidden beneath this ocean that we don't know about? A treasure of gold jewelry. Archaeologists, while exploring the Karnak temple complex in Luxor, discovered an ancient vessel filled with gold jewelry. It contained jewelry, beads, and figurines of Egyptian gods. According to experts, the find dates back to the 26th dynasty of Egypt and is about 2,600 years old. Jewelry in ancient Egypt was not just a luxury item. They were considered magical amulets that protected the owner from evil and disease. They played an important role not only in life but also in the afterlife, providing protection for eternity. Among the artifacts, the statuettes of the god Amon, the goddess Mut, and their son Khonsu stand out in particular. They were probably used as amulets and worn around the neck. Amon was considered the king of the gods and the patron of pharaohs, and later he merged with Ra, becoming the embodiment of both the visible and invisible deity. All the discovered items will be restored and possibly displayed in the Luxor Museum. Pharaoh Piopi, to Neferkari, who ruled Egypt during the 6th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, ascended the throne in 2278 BC when he was only 6 years old. The young ruler's guardian was his mother, who helped him govern the country during the early stages of his reign. Over time, Piopi proved to be quite an unusual person, and chronicles have preserved evidence of his strange actions. One of the most famous examples is his demand that slaves cover themselves in honey so that flies would be attracted to them and not bother the pharaoh himself. This invention may seem absurd, but it shows how Piopi tried to solve even the simplest inconveniences. Meanwhile, the fly became a symbol of resilience and bravery in ancient Egypt, and golden awards in the shape of flies were given to soldiers for special merits. Such ornaments can essentially be considered the first medals of honor in history. There is also a preserved letter from Piopi II to Harkhuf, the governor of Aswan, who led an expedition to Nubia. In it, the pharaoh strongly requested that a dancing pygmy be brought to the court for entertainment. This letter gives us an idea of his interests and how Egyptian rulers used those they brought.
Для придворных забав.
Piopi II's reign was one of the longest in history. He reigned for about 94 years, according to other sources, 64 years, and possibly lived to be 100 years old, making him one of the most memorable pharaohs of ancient Egypt. The life of ancient Egyptians. In the daily life of ancient Egyptians, breakfast did not have as extensive a menu as modern meals. Simple but nutritious foods formed the basis. Emmer bread, a bit of honey or figs for sweetness, and possibly a small amount of cheese made from goat's milk. This meal emphasized practicality and the need to maintain energy for the day ahead. It is important to note that breakfast for the pharaoh and his family could be more varied and rich, including meat products and fruits, highlighting their status and distinction from ordinary citizens. During the feast, Egyptians would display a wooden mummy for everyone to see. This custom served as a reminder of the brevity of life and the importance of enjoying the moment. This tradition may stem from a belief in lawmaking's power, to remind guests of the inevitability of death, which made every moment of earthly life even more precious. The very presence of the mummy at feasts may also have had ritual significance, connecting the living with the world of the dead and ensuring the favor of the gods. Footwear in ancient Egypt was not only a practical item, but also an expression of social status and even a means of symbolic communication. Sandals of the upper classes could be made from expensive materials and decorated with ornaments, which emphasized their high status. Images of enemies on the soles of sandals symbolized their defeat and subjugation, serving as a reminder of the power and might of their owner. The ancient Egyptians were exceptionally attached to their animals, which is reflected in the art and literature of that time. Cats, dogs, and even more exotic animals such as lions and monkeys were often depicted next to their owners, demonstrating the deep emotional bonds that develop between humans and animals. These animals not only served as companions, but also performed important functions in the household and religious rituals. Cats in Egypt were held in special reverence, being associated with the goddess Bastet, a symbol of protection and fertility. These animals were considered protectors of the home from evil spirits and pests. Dogs associated with Anubis, the god of funerary rituals, also held an important place in the lives of Egyptians. They not only served as loyal companions and helpers in hunting, but also symbolized eternal loyalty and protection. Fashion in ancient Egypt reflected not only social status, but also religious beliefs. Clothing made of fine linen, which allowed people to withstand the hot climate, was complemented by bright jewelry that not only decorated, but also served as amulets. Attention to detail in clothing, jewelry, and makeup indicates a highly developed sense of aesthetics and a belief in the protective magic of these items. Makeup, especially the famous black coal, was used not only to accentuate the eyes, but also as protection from sunlight and evil spirits. Beer was not just a popular beverage in ancient Egypt, it played a central role in the economy and social life. Being accessible and nutritious, beer served as the main beverage for all social classes and was even used as a means of payment. Beer production was a carefully regulated process controlled by the state, which highlights its importance not only as a commodity, but also as a vital element in religious and social rituals. Children's hairstyles in ancient Egypt served not only an aesthetic purpose, but also a symbolic one. The lock of youth, left on the heads of children, was not just a fashionable ornament. It symbolized their age and social status, and also protected them from evil spirits and diseases. This lock was cut off during the coming-of-age ceremony, highlighting the changes in their social status. Funerary portraits, which appeared in Egypt during the Greco-Roman period, represent a unique combination of Egyptian religious traditions and Greco-Roman artistic techniques. These portraits, depicting the deceased with unusual realism, were meant to preserve their appearance for the afterlife, serving as a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. Temperature. What is obvious to some is far from obvious to others. With this in mind, archaeologists and scientists conducted a joint study of the pyramids. Scientists discovered an unusual thermal anomaly in a famous structure, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Imagine, inside the pyramid they found a spot made up of several stone blocks that were hotter by several degrees.
Градусов, чем остальные. Это
This amazing discovery was made thanks to scanning the pyramid using the latest technological advancements, including infrared thermography, muon radiography, and 3D reconstruction. Such temperature differences may indicate the presence of a cavity or different materials inside the pyramid. Previously, it was believed that all the stones in the lower row of the Khufu pyramid were the same. However, thermal anomalies were also discovered in the upper half of the tomb. According to scientists, there are empty areas inside the pyramids. Experts are currently searching for them. Perhaps new discoveries await them there. But what exactly is hidden in this thermal anomaly in the Khufu pyramid? Evidence of extraterrestrial visitors. Now we come to one of the most controversial theories about the pyramids. There is an opinion that aliens helped build the pyramids. In the 1960s and 70s, this assumption became popular thanks to the book Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. He said that extraterrestrial beings came to Earth a long time ago and helped build the majestic pyramids. But why do we think that? First of all, the builders of the pyramids cut and installed the stone blocks with unusual precision. Some people believe that such work would have been impossible without futuristic technologies that could have been provided by aliens. Secondly, the pyramids seem to be arranged according to special astronomical patterns. For example, they align with the cardinal points of the compass. Some even suggest that this was done intentionally to serve as a beacon for incoming alien spacecraft. However, many scientists want to see evidence. They argue that there is no proof of aliens arriving on Earth, and everything in the pyramids can be explained by earthly technologies. The ancient Egyptians used giant ramps to move stone blocks to the top of the pyramid. This may sound primitive, but the effectiveness of this method is undeniable. At the moment, there is no evidence confirming the arrival of aliens, and although the pyramids remain some of the most amazing wonders of the world, most likely they were created solely by human hands and minds. Ancient Egyptian bread, estimated to be 33,693,406 years old, was found in the tomb of an architect who served Pharaoh Amenhotep III. This bread is an amazing example of food preservation, thanks to the advanced mummification technologies used by the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians mummified not only bodies but also food, which was believed to be used by the deceased in the afterlife. The process involved treating the food with salt, slow drying, wrapping, and coating it with resin to protect it from decay. The discovered loaves have traces of characteristic texture and shape, which confirms their origin and role in ritual ceremonies. Bread is both a symbolic and practical element of preparation for the afterlife, reflecting the Egyptians' deep belief that in the afterlife they would need everything they had in earthly life. The reborn Telemon. This unique atlas from the Temple of Zeus in the ancient city of Agrigento in Sicily is one of the most impressive examples of monumental sculpture from the 5th century BC. The temple, built in the Doric style, was considered one of the largest temples of the ancient world, and its architecture reflected the power of Greek civilization. The telemons, which served as supports, had symbolic significance representing titanic strength, holding up the sky or the immense weight of the architectural structure. These giant statues, about 7.5 meters tall, were impressive both in their detail and their size. One of the telemons was restored and placed in its original location, showing the sophistication of ancient craftsmen's engineering and artistry. But myths and mysteries surround the atlas. Some researchers believe that the images of the Titans could reflect ancient myths about the confrontation between gods and giants, and their position in the temple could symbolize their subjugation. Others believe that such size and form could have been used as depictions of extraterrestrial beings that the ancient inhabitants believed in. The Lost Jewels of Tutankhamun. The tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922, amazed people with its incredible artifacts. However, many of them disappeared. It is said that some of the pharaoh's treasures could have been taken out by Howard Carter, who led the excavation. At a recent conference in Luxor, Egyptologist Marc Gabolde from the French Paul Valéry University presented the results of his research. Based on photographs from the 1920s, he compared the artifacts with museum exhibits and auction lots. One example is the magnificent collar of Tutankhamun, which is now fragmented and scattered around the world. Gabold claims that its parts are in the Nelson Atkins Museum in the United States. In addition, beads from this collar were reworked into a necklace, which someone unsuccessfully tried to sell in 2015. Other finds include beads from the pharaoh's headdress in the St. Louis Museum and jewelry in the British Museum. Another faience caller was previously in the New York Metropolitan Museum but returned to Egypt in 2011. According to this investigation, it can be stated that the archaeologist Howard Carter stole these items. The documents indicate that he gave some items to the surgeon Berkeley Moynihan. When was the Saharan Ocean? Now it seems lifeless, endless sand, sun-scorched rocks, and rare caravans. But once, millions of years ago, the Sahara was completely different. It was an ocean. The Tethys Ocean was vast, warm, and inhabited by ancient creatures, ammonites, sea urchins, corals, and giant reptiles. All of this lived where today only lizards barely survive. Geologists have found traces of deltas, riverbeds, and shorelines. Everything here shows that water once splashed here. But the ocean disappeared, and a different story began in its place. Hundreds of thousands of years later, people settled on this land. Among the most ancient peoples, whose name still echoes through the sands, are the Berbers, or as they call themselves, the Amazigh. They descend from those who survived climate changes, vanished rivers and dried lakes, staying when others left. Their rock paintings in Tassili Nature are a true library of prehistoric events. Creatures, people hunting with bows, celebrations, scenes of love and war, even images of beings with rounded helmets, as if from another reality. Some believe this is an allegory. Others see it as proof of contact with another intelligence. But the essence is the same. Before the Sahara had even come alive, the Berbers already knew how to tell their stories. They knew where to find water, how to survive when the days are scorching and the nights are freezing. They ruled Numidia, traded with Rome, and fought with Egypt. And then they disappeared from the map, but not from the land. The Arab conquests pushed them out of the cities into the desert and mountains, but their culture survived. To this day, in remote villages, the Berber language can be heard, and memories that are thousands of years old are preserved. And in the desert itself, traces of an even more ancient past remain. Stone mushrooms. At first glance, they look like just rocks, but if you look closely, the shape is striking. A massive cap of hard stone rests on a thin, eroded stem. These formations are the result of differential erosion. The wind, carrying sand, polishes the soft rocks for years, leaving the hard ones standing. Each of these mushrooms is like a marker of time. Temporary, but proud. Their stems gradually become thinner, and one day the cap will collapse. They live for hundreds of thousands of years, but they are still doomed. Like the ocean and civilization, only the memory in stones, pollen, and sand outlasts everything. Are there any other traces left of this ancient civilization? And what can they tell us about a past that we still do not understand? What did the largest ship of antiquity look like? Patriotism. Humanity's need for huge warships arose long before steam engines and steel hulls. Thousands of years ago, the fleet was already considered the most important tool of influence and dominance. Through it, borders were strengthened, territories were conquered, and access to key resources was gained. It is believed that the foundation of ancient military shipbuilding was laid by the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander the Great. They were the first to build true war giants such as Polyers and Tessaraconters, comparable in scale to modern battleships. One of the most impressive ships of antiquity was the Egyptian Tessaraconter, built in the 3rd century BC by order of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. It was a true floating fortress, 130 meters long and 22 meters high. The vessel could hold about 4,000 rowers, not counting the crew, marines, and supplies. The name Tessaraconter translates as 40 rowed, referring to the number of oar levels. The exact number of oars is disputed. Researchers estimate it to be between 300 and 600. According to descriptions, the ship was heavily armed with a ram, catapults, and battle towers, and outwardly resembled a moving fortress. Its sides were decorated with carved wooden vines. Crocodiles and other mythical creatures were painted on the stern, and the bow was crowned with a 5-meter figure of Aeolus, the ruler of the winds. Inside, there were halls, statues, even libraries, and according to some sources, stables. All this spoke more about status than about practical military necessity. The Tessaracontera was more a symbol of power than an effective ship. Because of its size, it lacked proper maneuverability and couldn't even go out to sea on its own. It was towed by rowing boats. Nevertheless, its very existence became an engineering breakthrough. The Egyptian Tessera Contera is not just an archaic ship, but a vivid example of how ancient technologies could reach incredible scales. Yes, it did not become a battle legend, but it definitely went down in history as one of the most ambitious naval projects of its time. The Pyramids of Giza. The greatness of ancient Egyptian civilization is most vividly manifested in the Pyramids of Giza, standing on the Giza Plateau as eternal guardians of time. These monumental structures, built more than 4,500 years ago, remain some of humanity's most significant achievements, demonstrating not only architectural mastery, but also the advanced knowledge of the ancient Egyptians in mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. In 2013, archaeologists discovered mechanisms for transporting limestone blocks along the Nile. These documents, written by the pyramid construction supervisor Merer, describe the complex logistical operation of transporting stones from the Tura quarries to the Giza Plateau. The use of waterways and specially constructed canals demonstrates a high level of engineering and planning. The Pyramid of Khufu, also known as the Great Pyramid, impresses with its astronomical precision. The orientation of the pyramid almost perfectly matches the four cardinal directions, which indicates the profound knowledge of astronomy possessed by the ancient Egyptians. This achievement required not only precise astronomical observations, but also the development of mathematical and geometric calculation methods. One of the most fascinating mysteries of ancient Egypt is the secret of the vanished brilliance of the pyramids. Originally, the pyramids of Giza were covered with sparkling white limestone, which reflected sunlight, making them visible for dozens of kilometers around. This brilliant appearance not only emphasized the grandeur and power of the pharaohs, but also symbolized their divine origin. Over time, most of the facing stones were looted or destroyed, which led to the loss of the pyramid's original appearance. For nearly 4 millennia, the Great Pyramid remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth until it was surpassed by Lincoln Cathedral in England in the 14th century. This fact highlights the exceptional achievement of ancient Egyptian civilization in the field of architecture and construction. The construction of the pyramids involved the use of millions of stone blocks, each weighing from 2.5 to 15 tons. The ancient Egyptians developed and used complex techniques and tools for quarrying these blocks, processing them, and placing them with precision. Nubia, located to the south of Egypt, played a significant role in the history and culture of ancient Egyptian civilization. This region, rich in gold and other valuable resources, influenced the development of Egyptian art, architecture, and religion. The Nubian pyramids, although smaller in size compared to their Egyptian counterparts, demonstrate unique architectural skill and testify to the close cultural ties between the two regions. It is important to note that more than 200 pyramids were built in Nubia, making this region one of the areas with the highest concentration of pyramids in the world. Egyptian tools. Traces of stone cutting were found in Egypt, which were discovered more than 100 years ago. It was the legendary pyramid researcher Sir William Flinders Petrie. He noticed these traces even on the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau. He suggested that the sarcophagus was cut from granite using huge saws 3 meters long. Saw marks can also be found all over Egypt. For example, near the Great Pyramid, there are the ruins of a temple. There, on the stone floor, numerous saw marks have been preserved. At the beginning of the 20th century, German archaeologists even deliberately displayed blocks with saw marks during the restoration of the temple. Historians suggest that in ancient times, the Egyptians used copper saws. And since copper is softer than granite and basalt, it is assumed that the Egyptians used quartz sand as an abrasive. 3,600 years of silence. For thousands of years, the sand kept the secrets of ancient Thebes, today known as Luxor, until archaeologists once again looked beneath its centuries-old dust. In recent excavations near the mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut, scientists discovered a system of tombs up to 3,600 years old, and along with them, portals into the life and beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. The work has been carried out with the participation of the Zahi Hawass Foundation and the Supreme Council of Antiquities of Egypt since the fall of 2022. Among the finds are bronze coins with the profile of Alexander the Great, children's toys made of fired clay, various ornaments, winged scarabs, and even carved beads. Here, a part of the Hatshepsut temple carved into the rock of a Middle Kingdom tomb was also discovered, along with the remains of the Asasif necropolis from the Ptolemaic period. The burial shafts date back to the 17th dynasty, and in one of them, there was a wooden coffin with the remains of a child. All of this helps us to better understand how people lived, believed, and died. A special find is the tomb of Jehu Timesa, a courtier associated with Queen Tetisheri. The inscription indicates that the burial dates back to the 9th year of the reign of Yamas Thursthur. The war boughs found here may suggest that the owner served as a soldier and fought during the expulsion of the Hyksos. In November of the same year, another tomb from the Middle Kingdom era was discovered nearby, containing 11 sealed burials. Archaeologists are sure that Luxor still holds many similar surprises. Every new artifact, whether it's beads or a battle bow, subtly lifts the veil over the culture and history of pharaonic Egypt. The tomb of the magician. In Saqqara, the necropolis of ancient Memphis, archaeologists discovered the tomb of the royal physician Teti Nepfu, who lived about 4,000 years ago. According to the preserved inscriptions on the walls and the sarcophagus, it was established that he served under Pharaoh Pepe II and held many titles: chief physician of the palace, chief dentist, director of medicinal plants, priest, and magician of the goddess Silket. Since Silket was the patroness of dangerous venomous creatures, scientists believe that Teti Nepfu was able to treat poisonous bites. Despite the fact that the tomb was partially looted, its walls have been preserved in excellent condition and are decorated with bright paintings, scenes of offerings, a false door, a ritual image. In addition to royal burials, tombs of royal officials have previously been found in Saqqara, including companions and servants of Pepi II. Recently, several stone sarcophagi with hieroglyphs dedicated to the gods of Upper and Lower Egypt were also excavated there. According to experts, the splendor of Teti Nepfu's final resting place indicates the high status of healing and magic at that time. The Egyptians had deep knowledge in the field of anatomy, were able to treat serious ailments, and considered words and rituals to be just as important as medicine. The Sphinx was not built by humans. A recent discovery by a group of scientists from New York University radically changes our perception of the history of the Great Sphinx in Giza. Contrary to the commonly accepted opinion that this monument was carved by the ancient Egyptians, the new theory claims that the Sphinx is the result of natural forces. The researchers drew attention to yardangs, natural sculptures formed by erosion in desert conditions, which resemble the outlines of animals or people. Such formations are typical for archaeological zones with a similar climate, including the territory of Egypt. During experiments simulating erosion in laboratory conditions, scientists proved that when wind and water act on soft rock, figures can form that strikingly resemble the Sphinx. So it is possible that the ancient Egyptians simply polished or enhanced an already existing natural form, giving it more distinct features. This research opens a new chapter in understanding the process of forming archaeological monuments and the role of nature in the art of antiquity. A curious discovery in Egypt. In Egypt, two divers found unique artifacts from the Greco-Roman period, retrieving hundreds of ancient relics from the sea floor. However, instead of handing the finds over to the authorities, they tried to keep them for themselves. The artifacts were found in Abu Kirbe, off the coast of Alexandria, at the site where the sunken cities of Heraklion and Canopus once stood. As a result of the police operation, 448 items were seized from the divers: 305 coins, 53 statuettes, 41 axes, 14 bronze bowls, 12 spears, and even 3 heads from ancient statues. The coins are decorated with images of animals: lions, elephants, turtles, dolphins, as well as Pegasus, the legendary winged horse. Many of the bronze artifacts are covered with a turquoise patina due to centuries spent underwater. According to the examination, the finds date from 500 BC to 400 AD, covering the reign of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the subsequent rule of Rome. The divers are suspected of attempting theft and possibly concealing some of the artifacts. Creepy customs in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, women's bodies were often set aside for mummification at a later time after death. This was not done for religious reasons, but to reduce the risk of unwanted actions by the attendants. By delaying the embalming process, the ancient Egyptians tried to make the female body less attractive and thus prevent cases of necrophilia. Since the ancient Egyptians attached great importance to preserving the body for the afterlife, the preservation of the deceased was an extremely important task. In this regard, a measure was developed for women that was considered protective. This custom, although it may seem grim, demonstrates how important ethical and physical protection of the deceased's body was in Egypt for preserving honor and ensuring a peaceful transition to the afterlife.
An incredible discovery under the waters of the Nile. Archaeologists made an amazing discovery under the waters of the Nile in the Aswan area, a collection of ancient Egyptian artifacts and rock carvings related to the era when the city experienced a powerful flood. The relics found date back to the reigns of pharaohs such as Amenhotep III, Thutmose IV, and Psamtik II. About 4,500 years ago, Aswan was an important trade and military center. Gold, wood, and spices were traded here, and materials for building temples, obelisks, and pyramids were delivered from the granite quarries. However, after the construction of the Aswan Dam, most of the city ended up underwater. The Franco-Egyptian archaeological mission discovered unique rock reliefs depicting pharaohs, hieroglyphic inscriptions, and other sculptural elements. The work was carried out using modern technologies such as underwater scanning, photogrammetry, and 3D modeling. These methods made it possible to document the discovered artifacts in detail and create their digital reconstructions. Of particular interest is the image of Amenhotep III, who ruled Egypt for about 40 years and left a rich legacy. His burial was located in the Theban necropolis on the west bank of the Nile, opposite modern Luxor. Unfortunately, many monuments related to his era were damaged by floods, but the new discovery gives hope for the restoration of these historical relics.
The statue of Mongoose from ancient Egypt is not only a charming artifact, but also a find of mystical significance. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Mongoose was associated with divine forces of light and protection. In Heliopolis, the center of the cult of the sun god Ra, the mongoose symbolized the victory of light over darkness. According to myths, the god Ra, taking the form of a mongoose, fought Apophis, the serpent of chaos who threatened the solar bark. This bronze statue with a solar disk on its head symbolizes energy and immortality. Such artifacts were often placed in temples or used in rituals for protection against evil. Interestingly, some researchers suggest that the mongoose, with its ability to hunt snakes, also symbolize the skill to overcome difficulties and defeat enemies, both spiritual and physical. Many similar figurines have been found in tombs, where they likely served as amulets to help the souls of the deceased overcome dangers in the afterlife. Mongooses, having become part of sacred Egyptian symbolism, remain a reminder of deep connections.
Природы, религии и духовной философии этого древнего города.
A grand discovery in Egypt. Archaeologists have discovered an ancient tomb with 11 sealed burials near Luxor, Egypt, in the South Asasif necropolis. The tomb dates back to the Middle Kingdom and likely served as a family burial site for several generations during the 12th and early 13th dynasties. The discovery was made possible thanks to a modern expedition of Egyptian and American scientists. This is the first Middle Kingdom burial found in South Asasif, which expands our understanding of this necropolis and its connection to the Theban necropolis. Due to ancient floods, many wooden coffins and linen wrappings were destroyed, but the ornaments have been preserved, including amulets and necklaces made of amethyst, agate, and faience. One of the unique items was a fertility figurine made of bluish-green faience, decorated with drawings and featuring grooves for attaching hair made of clay beads. A square sacrificial plate was also found, depicting symbolic offerings such as a bull's head, bread, and meat, which may have been used in rituals. The remains of 5 women, 2 men, and 3 children were placed in wooden coffins, oriented from north to south. Jewelry was preserved in the women's burials, while the children and one of the men were buried without any. The other man was found with a necklace made of 40 faience beads and an amulet shaped like a hippopotamus head. This discovery is especially important in the context of the revival of tourist interest in Egypt, where historical treasures are once again attracting attention.
Саркофаги.
Sarcophagi. Archaeologists have discovered unique tombs and burial masks that are as much as 4,500 years old, and they were found near the pyramids of Giza in the heart of the ancient necropolis. Several tombs from the Old Kingdom era were discovered there, the oldest of which dates back to the 25th century. BC ancient inscriptions and decorations have been preserved inside. In one of the tombs was Peikwang, the chief court judge and priest of the goddess Mat. He oversaw purification rituals in the pyramid temples of the kings Khafra, Userkaf, and Nusera. The second inhabitant of the tomb was his relative Nui, a nobleman with 5 court titles and a priest in the temple of Khafra. Excavations began in August 2018, and to reach these tombs, about 450,000 cubic meters of sand had to be moved. Some tombs were destroyed, some were looted in ancient times, but were reused for burials in the 7th to 6th centuries BC. Because of this, among the later wooden sarcophagi, amazing works of art were found, magnificent clay and wooden funerary masks. And all this was found not far from the cemetery of the pyramid builders. This proves that the pyramids were not built by slaves, but by ordinary people who were buried next to their kings. A brewery from the time of Egypt's first rulers. Archaeologists have discovered the oldest brewery in the world, located in the necropolis of Abydos, Egypt. This discovery not only sheds light on early brewing technologies, but also helps us understand how resources were managed during the construction of the pyramids. The complex consists of 8 massive installations, each up to 20 meters long. Each of them contains 2 rows of 40 vessels, which were used to heat a mixture of grain and water, a classic beer brewing process. Scientists date the brewery to the era of Pharaoh Narmer, who is considered the founder of the first dynasty. Dr. Adams, who led the research, called this discovery an example of industrial-scale production, and noted that it demonstrates a high level of labor organization in ancient Egypt. The ability to manage the mass distribution of resources and organize the workforce allowed the Egyptians to build grand structures, including the pyramids. In addition, beer played an important role in rituals. Large-scale production in Abydos indicates its use in sacrifices, ceremonies, and rituals, which confirms its significance in the development of Egyptian royal power. The lost city where gold was mined. In the vicinity of Prague, archaeologists discovered a multi-layered settlement that combines artifacts from the Neolithic, Hallstatt, and Latin cultures, as well as the Middle Ages. More than 9,000 objects have been found, which led to the suspension of road construction. The earliest finds date back to the end of the 6th millennium BC. 8 long-columned houses, stone tools, and a stoneworking workshop. People lived here later as well, up until the 5th century BC, as evidenced by 10 semi-subterranean houses from the Hallstatt and Latin periods. Among other artifacts, archaeologists discovered exquisite pottery with rich decoration, a bronze ornament, and also the handle of a drinking vessel probably brought from the Adriatic. All this indicates the existence of trade connections with southern regions. Scientists believe that representatives of the nobility lived in the settlement, having access to rare resources. In addition, researchers discovered several dozen round pits from the 13th century, which they believe are related to gold prospecting or mining. A large medieval gold mine was located nearby. The findings span several eras at once. The cost of building the Pyramid of Khufu. We are used to skyscrapers that rise with the help of metal frames and modern technology, but the Pyramid of Khufu, built around 2600 BC, still captures the imagination. Its height reached 146 meters, and only by the 13th century AD did taller buildings appear. To understand how much it would cost to build such a pyramid today, historians and engineers estimated the expenses for stone, transportation, wages, crane rentals, and other details. The total comes to an impressive sum of about $5 billion. After all, it would require about 2.5 million cubic meters of limestone, which would have to be transported from quarries, and for the interfacing thousands of tons of granite from Aswan,
расположенного за сотни километров.
Add to that the designers, geologists, fuel for transporting the blocks, and giant cranes. In ancient times, however, everything was done by hand. It is believed that thousands of free workers worked on the construction site, regularly replaced by teams who received decent food and housing. They moved multi-ton blocks along ramps using wooden rollers and built a colossal structure that amazes with the precision of its assembly. Even today, you can't fit a blade between some of the stones. According to some experts, construction took between 20 and 27 years. To feed the workers, about 2 tons of meat were needed every day, not counting grain, vegetables, and water. It is noteworthy that the project itself was led by Hemiunu, the pharaoh's nephew, who actually served as the chief architect. He was the one who coordinated the work of tens of thousands of people, which in itself speaks to the impressive organization of labor in ancient Egypt. Today, the pyramids remain not only objects of historical interest, but also a source of eternal questions about what humanity is capable of in pursuit of ambitious goals. For the Egyptians, the Pyramid of Khufu was something more than just a building. It is a symbol of the pharaoh's power and the greatest engineering achievement of its time, which still inspires us to bold accomplishments. Secret chambers. So what could be hidden inside the pyramids? There are many theories, from religious artifacts to treasures full of knowledge. And some are even convinced that artifacts of cosmic gods could be hidden in the secret chambers of the Egyptian pyramids. Do you remember the story from the 90s when a robot lowered into one of the shafts encountered mysterious doors? Ancient Greek and Roman scholars were intrigued by the pyramid builders' craftsmanship, and medieval Arab chroniclers, such as al-Masudi and al-Idrisi, wrote about wonders, gold, and mummies that might have been found inside. But not all scholars agree that the pyramids served only as tombs. Supporters of alternative history claim that the Great Pyramid could have been a time capsule, a repository of knowledge from an ancient civilization that became the foundation of ancient Egypt. And there is an even more exotic theory from Christopher Dunn, who suggested that the Great Pyramid could have been nothing less than a power plant. And don't forget the Hall of Records, the legendary ancient library where some researchers believe all ancient knowledge is stored, knowledge that could challenge our understanding of the world. Egypt and the swastika. The more I studied the archives about the Ahnenerbe, the clearer it became. The Nazis were not just interested in finding ancient artifacts. They needed to place themselves in a grand past to create a narrative where the Aryans were not just a people, but the direct heirs of the most ancient civilizations. Egypt held a special place in this system, not because of the pyramids and mummies, but because of the symbols and rituals. They called the swastika the sun cross. For them, it was not just a sign, it was a code. The swastika really does appear in the cultures of India, Tibet, and China, and in Egypt, at least in the form of indirect symbolism. The movement of the sun, 4 directions, the cult of Ra. They found confirmation of their ideas in this. Sometimes it was far-fetched, sometimes quite convincing. Before the war, some researchers associated with the Ahnenerbe really were in Egypt, unofficially. They were interested in ancient books, burial rituals, ideas about the afterlife, and how the Egyptians connected power, magic, and order. The Nazis saw this as a system, not a religion, but a mechanism of control, as if the ancients knew something that was forgotten, and they came to restore it. I looked at photographs from those expeditions. People in SS uniforms standing by temples, stone bas-reliefs decorated with runes. It wasn't just imitation, it was an attempt to create their own religion, a new one, not relying on symbols that inspire strength. When Hitler spoke about returning to the past, he didn't mean Prussia, he was looking further back, into millennia, into a civilization that had already disappeared but left a trace, and he wanted that trace to lead to them. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists found the tomb of an unknown pharaoh that is about 3,600 years old. It is located 7 meters deep in an ancient necropolis known as the Mountain of Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. Most likely it was looted back in ancient times. The name of the pharaoh was written on the plaster at the entrance, but it has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that it could be one of the lesser-known rulers, such as Sinib or Pentageni, who are mentioned in other sources, but whose burials have not yet been found. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in Egypt's history when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty, whose representatives may have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of the earlier and more influential pharaoh, Neferhotep-III, and its architecture resembles both the tombs of the Middle Kingdom and those from later periods. What is the thickness of the sand layer in the desert? When you hear the word desert, you imagine huge sand dunes stretching to the horizon. But a desert is not just sand under the scorching sun. It's a world full of mysteries and unexplored corners, open for exploration. Studying deserts is not an easy task because of the extreme climate and the unknown, sometimes complicated political situation. But the desert holds much more than it seems at first glance. In addition to sand, there are rocky, gravelly, mixed, and salt-flat deserts, as well as Arctic deserts covered with ice and snow. All of them together cover about 20% of the surface of our planet. Of particular interest is the depth of the sand cover in deserts and what lies beneath this golden sea. Beneath the layer of sand, there is always a rocky foundation. The depth of the sand varies depending on the location and various external factors, making measurements a difficult task. Sand dunes can move at a speed of up to 10 meters per year, which makes studying these sandy seas even more difficult. In the Sahara, the average sand depth reaches 150 meters, and in the Namib Desert, some dunes rise up to 400 meters. There is more than just rocks hidden beneath the desert sands. In the Sahara, for example, there are reserves of oil, gas, and even fresh water, accessible only to the bravest explorers. Scientists have created maps of underground water located at a depth of about 75 meters, which is a real treasure in desert drought conditions. 5,000-year-old wine. A team of scientists from the University of Vienna, led by archaeologist Christiana Keller, is studying the tomb of Queen Meretnate in Abydos, the greatest ruler from around the 31st century BC. The latest findings highlight her role in history. Archaeologists have discovered 5,000-year-old wine and many other burial items. These discoveries confirm that Meretnate was the first female pharaoh, preceding the well-known Hatshepsut. What makes Meretnate unique is that she had a unique monumental tomb in the first royal necropolis of Abydos. The mystery of her identity has yet to be solved. During the excavations, many burial items were found, including 100 beautifully preserved wine jars. Some of them are still sealed and contain ancient wine. The inscriptions indicate that Meretnate controlled key state institutions, such as the treasury, which confirms her exceptional place in history. The burial complex of the queen in Abydos, consisting of the graves of 41 courtiers and her tomb, was built from mud brick, clay, and wood. Research has shown that the construction was carried out gradually over a long period of time. The face of Tutankhamun's grandmother. Scientists were able to reconstruct the appearance of Queen Tiye, Tutankhamun's grandmother, thanks to modern 3D technology. The mummy of Tiye was found more than 120 years ago in the Valley of the Kings, but only now has it been possible to reconstruct her face with high accuracy. Experts studied the structure of the skull, reconstructed the soft tissues, the volume under the skin, and the hair, relying on data about the appearance of women in ancient Egypt. As a result, they created the image of a woman with brown eyes, chestnut curly hair, a high cheekbone face, and dark skin. Tiye's facial features turned out to be delicate and harmonious. Queen Tiye was born around 1398 BC in a family that did not belong to the nobility. Her father, Yuya, was a chariot commander, and her mother, Tuya, managed the harem. Thanks to her personal qualities, Tiye became the wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III and had a significant influence on the politics of Egypt. She participated in governing the country, appeared in official documents, and was respected by her husband. Her son Akhenaten carried out one of the largest religious reforms in Egypt, rejecting the traditional gods and making the cult of Aten central. These changes had a strong influence on culture and art, and Tiye's grandson Tutankhamun later restored the old traditions. His short but remarkable reign became famous thanks to the discovery of his tomb in 1922. Scientists have determined that Tiye died at the age of 40 to 60, most likely of natural causes. Some of her features, such as the shape of her chin, were passed down to her descendants, including Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun's sandals. This elegant pair of sandals was found in the famous tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun and is now part of the Egyptian collection. These sandals are not just footwear, but a true work of art and a symbolic detail reflecting the worldview of the ancient Egyptians. They are made of wood and covered with intricate inlays, made from bark, green leather, and gold foil. The images on the sandals depict Egypt's bound enemies, Nubians and Asians, symbolizing the pharaoh's triumph over his adversaries. The sandals were possibly used as part of ceremonial attire and held special significance. Imagine the pharaoh putting on such footwear as if trampling his enemies, demonstrating his power and protection over Egypt. The inlay and detailing of the work are striking evidence of the high level of craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian artisans. For the pharaoh, such items emphasized his status, his divine right to the throne, and his role as the protector of the nation. The grim secret of the Black Death. The study of an ancient Egyptian mummy has shed light on the early spread of the deadly bubonic plague in North Africa. The remains, 3,290 years old and kept in the Egyptian Museum of Turin, amaze scientists. Traces of the Yersinia pestis bacteria were found in the bones and even in the contents of the intestines. It turned out that the disease had entered the region long before the Black Death epidemic that raged in Europe in the 14th century. Until now, the oldest mentions of the plague came from Asia, a 5,000-year-old find in Russia, and materials from Europe and Asia. But the mummy from Turin confirmed for the first time that the dangerous pathogen had also settled in ancient Egypt. Scientists recalled that in the village of Amarna, where the builders of Tutankhamun's tomb worked, fleas were found, and they are the main carriers of the infection. There are even mentions in the Ebers Papyrus, which is more than 3,500 years old, about a mysterious bubo filled with pus. This suggests that the plague could have spread from Nile rats to ship passengers, who eventually carried the disease throughout the Mediterranean. Thus, the Black Death became just a vivid chapter in the long history of the plague. And now it is clear that its sinister waves swept across the world much earlier than previously thought, and Africa played a much more significant role in this process. The smell of Egyptian mummies. Scientists have studied the scents of ancient Egyptian mummies for the first time, revealing unexpected details of the embalming process. The analysis showed that the mummies emit woody, spicy, and sweet aromas associated with the use of natural preservatives. The researchers studied 9 mummies, whose ages range from the New Kingdom era to the Byzantine period. Using gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, they determined the composition of embalming substances: pine, cedar, and juniper resins, myrrh, frankincense, spices, herbs, vegetable oils, animal fat, and wax. According to experts, the discovery will help preserve ancient artifacts and also open up new opportunities for museums. Now, visitors will not only be able to see, but also smell ancient Egypt, immersing themselves in the atmosphere of that era. Scents played an important role in Egyptian rituals. A pleasant aroma symbolized divinity and purity, while unpleasant odors were associated with decay and impurity. Even after 5,000 years, mummies have preserved their fragrance, highlighting the significance of this aspect in ancient culture. The harsh realities of ancient Egypt. During archaeological excavations in Gaza, on the site of an ancient Egyptian gold mine, iron shackles about 2,200 years old were found. These heavy shackles became direct evidence of ancient accounts describing the cruel treatment of people who worked in the mines during the reign of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The shackles were discovered in a room that served as an ancient storage area. Inside, there were tools for processing ore, fragments of pottery, and 2 sets of shackles. One of them consisted of 7 ring locks connected by iron links, and the other had 4 links and damaged hoops. Their design is strikingly similar to the shackles found in the silver mines of Lorient in Greece, which suggests a transfer of technology and possibly methods of forced labor from the Greek world to Egypt. Archaeologist Baranji Redden notes that this discovery confirms ancient texts describing the fates of prisoners of war and criminals who were sent to forced labor. The mine at Gazi was active in the 4th century BC during a period of intensive mining expansion under the Ptolemies. Residential houses, streets, and even baths were found on its territory, but behind the facade of organized life, harsh conditions were hidden. Interestingly, archaeologists also found tablets and shards, with inscriptions indicating that some workers were paid, while others worked under strict control. The gold of the Ptolemies. This diadem is more than 2,000 years old. It was created in Egypt during the Ptolemaic dynasty, a period that began right after the death of Alexander the Great. Most likely, it belonged to one of the noble women, a queen, a priestess, or an heiress at the court. The ornament is made of thin sheet gold. Torches, symbols of power and light, are shown on the sides, while the Heracles knot, a famous Greco-Roman protective amulet, is in the center. It symbolized protection, healing, good fortune, and childbirth. The unique amulet is tied to the diadem along the forehead line as part of its design. Golden tassels hang from the lower edge. Originally, there were 8, but only 5 remain. When the head moved, they swayed, reflecting the light. The inlays of carnelian, garnet, and pearls are only visible up close. The ornament was not created for showy effect, but as part of a person's overall appearance. Such items rarely survive to this day, especially in an almost complete form. The diadem is now at the Getty Museum, displayed separately under spotlights. Even behind glass, it's obvious this is more than just an object. Once it rested on someone's head and belonged not to an era, but to a person. None of this changes history, but together it makes you look at it more closely. Such things are easy to miss, but if you pause, they stay with you for a long time. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Goodbye, everyone.